Well, I'm really excited, you guys, to give this talk because for me, 80% of my business comes from doing appointments. I'm sort of old school. I never really took shows on as a huge part of my business. So most of my business is really just old school way of doing appointments with past customers or recommendations, show leads. Most of my phone success is really in my mindset. I never, ever have doubted myself when it comes to the phone. I've never doubted the process. I was kind of a nerd when I first started and in training. Anything they told me to do, I just did it and I completely embraced it. So for me, it was the same thing with the phone. If they told me, you make a certain number of calls, you're going to get a certain number of appointments, I've just never doubted it. But also, partially, it's because I'm relentless. Like, I never give up. That's one of the number one tips I can tell you is you have to change your mindset and you can't give up. You can't even allow yourself to think for a second that you will not get the appointments that you want. That's never even a question in my mind. Actually, you should be absolutely positive that you're getting them. Like, I already know. Like, for instance, if you were to ask me to have lunch, like next Wednesday at 12 p.m., when I look at my calendar, if I see I have appointment already allotted, I don't even have the appointments yet. I'm going to tell you, I'm sorry, I'm not available that day because I know I'm going to get those appointments. And that's my work schedule, right? So I don't have to have the appointments to know that I'm going to be doing them. But part of it is also knowing your stats. And you really have to be real with your numbers. I know everybody has different stats when it comes to, every part of the business, especially with phone. But let's say if the reality is that you have to make 10 calls to get one appointment, then based on whatever your sales goal is, say you want 10 appointments, then just plan to make 100 calls. I mean, I know that sounds very basic, and some of you maybe already look at it in this way, but what I've found is that people forget some of the basics, as we go further in. And so to make 100 calls, that should take you roughly 2.5 hours total. But have that time in your schedule, and I'll talk about that as well. But it's a numbers game, right? If you make the calls, you're going to get the appointments. There's no way around it. This is a tried and proven process. We've been doing it for decades. There's just no doubt. And become very process oriented, right? Don't get bogged down. I heard this from John Berghoff one time years ago, and it's really about the process, not about the results, right? So really the process in the Cutco job is make calls, get the appointments, complete the appointments, get recs, and make more calls. That's the process. And you don't have to get bogged down in the results of it, because as long as you follow the process, the results will follow. Okay. Do what you're supposed to do and the results will follow. But really, the phone is our job. I know that sometimes, of course, we have to work on closing ratio and everything else that we do, and closing bigger and raising your average order and just overall, improving our results. I would never say to ignore any of that. But the phone is the job. If you don't make calls, you're not getting appointments, you're not able to work. In my view, the only scenario where you don't get the appointments that you need is that you didn't keep calling, right? So unless you stop calling, you're going to get the appointments. It's a direct correlation. It's not a guessing game for me. If you ask any of my mentees, if we have a number of appointments goal for them and they don't hit that number, the first thing we're talking about is what prevented you from making the calls that you were supposed to make, right? Let's dig in and see why you didn't make the calls. It's just not possible. It's a direct correlation, right? So what I think happens is you get discouraged. That's what happens with people. They get discouraged. And then because of that, they stop really wanting to make the calls. But the way that the fix for that, honestly, and it's going to sound counterintuitive, but it's actually not. It's really just like leaning in to that pain and you can fix it. The way you fix getting bad results is by making more calls. That's the way around that. And so for you, I would give you a scheduling tip. for everybody. If you're doing, and one of the ways to kind of alleviate the pressure when you're making calls is if you're planning on doing like 4 appointments a day for Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, for example, then you should have in front of you 4, 3, 2, 1 scheduled. 4 for Wednesday, 3 for Thursday, 2 for Friday, 1 for Saturday. That way, when you get on the phone on Tuesday, then you're not feeling like very pressured. You only need to get 1 appointment for Thursday. You can start working on booking Friday. Wednesday's already booked and ready to go. So always try to keep ahead of you 4, 3, 2, 1, depending on the number of appointments you're doing. But it really takes the pressure off. Some of these are very basic again, but I think we just don't talk about it that much. Guard your phone time. This is actually your job, right? It's not like an optional part of what you do. If you have a friend who has a regular job, they're not able to talk to you during their work hours, right? So just because your phone time might be at 6 or 7 p.m., that doesn't mean that you're not working, right? So everybody in your family should know. And I started that way from day one. Everybody in my family knew, and back then we were using landlines a lot because I've been around doing this for a while, but all of my kids' friends knew that if they called during phone time, my kids were not going to be available to talk to them. They didn't have cell phones at that time. But everybody in your world should know when you're not available because you're making calls. And set yourself up for success. Find your best phone times. Don't be, just like all over the map with it. You should know your best phone times. I know in my area, and I would venture to say in most places, I believe 8 a.m., 11 a.m., 1 p.m., and 7 p.m. are really good phone times. I prefer shorter phone times myself. I don't like to be on the phone for 3 hours. But the only way that works is if you make sure to put 3 hours. If you need 3 hours to get your appointments this week, make sure that you have 3 hours in your schedule, right? Otherwise, it doesn't work. You're going to have to do the 3-hour phone jam. But if you can manage to schedule it properly, you don't have to do that. I have never done a 3-hour phone time in my life. Never meander during phone time. Stay focused. Don't take personal calls. I know this sounds very basic, but I know that people actually do these things because I've watched it myself. It's not a time to goof around with your list. Your list should be ready to go when you get on the call. You shouldn't be flipping through trying to figure out who you're going to call. And just to keep in mind that most sale jobs in general are making calls all day long with much less success. One of my first real jobs, I worked at a brokerage firm. I was in the front office, but the stockbrokers would come in. I came in at like 9 to 5. They would come in from like 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. And all they did all day long was call people and ask them for money. So imagine how easy that must have been. But our success at turning cold leads into appointments is extremely unusual in the sales world. And it's very unique to our program. So I would say, really take advantage of that. We have a very unique opportunity that we are able to do that. Another scheduling tip would be to make sure that you have all of your appointment times in your calendar and your phone times. Everything should already be laid out before you pick up the phone, because I've seen that too, where people are just sort of jumping all over the calendar because they don't have appointment times already scheduled in their calendar. And what happens with that is it allows customers to push your times, and that can affect your whole day. Right? So do not let customers push your appointment times. The reason I'm able to do these things, you guys, is because I'm so consistent with making calls that whenever I pick up the phone, I'm never desperate. I'm never desperate for an appointment. If I don't get an appointment, I'll get it from somebody else, right? Because I know I'm going to get them. There's just no way around that. But if you want to do your appointments like 11, 1, 3, and 5, let's say, and a customer tells you the only time they can do it is at 12 or 2 on that day, well, find another day. Just tell them, okay, well, that's not going to work out, because I've seen it happen. If you take that 12 o'clock or that 2 o'clock, it shifts your whole day. Next thing you know, now you can't make calls, or your other appointments aren't going to work out. You lose a whole appointment because you have something else going on in the afternoon. And let me tell you, it's actually very empowering to not be so desperate that you have to take that 12 o'clock appointment. Okay. So I would say even use that as an exercise of empowering yourself because you know you will get the appointments that you need. The other thing I do is I eliminate getting no as an answer in any context whatsoever in our conversation. Like, for example, if I don't know if a client is available during the day on a weekday, I will offer them a daytime appointment time, but I'm also going to offer them an evening appointment or a weekend appointment time, right? If I only offer a weekday appointment time and they're not available, they might say no, which I just don't ever want to hear them say no during the process of that call. You have to eliminate every no answer you can possibly get, and you can anticipate that by offering more than one time. As far as it goes with recommendations, this is part of, I mean, phone and recs and leads, and it's all connected, right? Because that's who you're calling. The recs are who you're calling. So set yourself up for success with that. When you get the recs from a client, you should be qualifying them. And maybe, you're not going to get into it, depending, because I know with the virtual, sometimes it takes a little longer. A short, very quick way to do it is 3 very easy questions that you can ask them. Number 1, after they've given you the full list, ask them, if you were me, who would you call first, right? Mind you, I'm still going to call the whole list, but I'd like to call the people that they think are the best leads first. Number 2, go through the list and ask them if the people are home during the day, or if they work full time, and where they're located. If you're doing in-person appointments, that will help a ton. Maybe you guys are already doing this, but I found that it's a good reminder. And number 3, could this person make a decision without their spouse? And this one, you'll be very surprised that people are extremely knowledgeable about this. Like, when you ask them, friends and family always know. It's like, oh no, Jennifer, absolutely. She could totally make a decision. Oh, I'm not sure about Steve. He would definitely have to have his wife there because she wears the pants, whatever it is. They will tell you everything about the couples. And then that way, like, if they say the spouse has to be there, great. Do you happen to know if her spouse works full time? And then I would only ever offer options for an evening or weekend appointment. Again, eliminating the number of no's that I get on the phone call. Qualifying show leads as well. I want to know where they're located. Some people don't have it totally filled out. Their work schedule, right? Are you home during the day sometimes? And who does the cooking? That's what I want to know when it's a service call, especially a show lead. With my customers, I'm more knowledgeable, but with the show lead, I want to know who does the cooking. And depending on the relationship and the connection I have with them at the booth, I might even just come right out and ask them, if you were to see something you like, could you make a decision on your own? Right. And I'll even throw out like a big number. Like this one time I met this couple and they wanted me to come over and sharpen like a couple of knives that they had, but they were talking really about upgrading. And she was the only one that was going to be available for that appointment time. So finally I just came out and said, like, if it was like $3 or $4 grand, could you make a decision on that? And she was like, no, we better do it when he's there, right? So depending on the connection you have, don't be afraid to ask these questions. It's only going to set you up for success. Call everybody on your list. Do not prejudge people. Don't scan down the list and skip people. This creates gaps in your process. And the next thing you know, you're trying to have to remember who you called last and when you called them. I know you guys have an app now for that as well, and I'm sure that helps. But first thing, you don't know who's going to buy Cutco. Most of us still don't know. After 20 years, if you lined 10 people up and gave me their name and phone number, I don't think I could tell you who is going to buy Cutco, right? So you have no idea. And unless you have thousands of leads, you really just need to be calling everybody. Because a lot of times what will happen is you call somebody that you were going back and forth about not calling for some reason, and they bought Cutco already from somebody else, right? So that can be more depressing than anything. Don't let customers push you off. Okay. This is, I think, one of my biggest keys to success in the phone is that it's sort of like in the closing process. We know, right, after doing this for a long time, that the best chance for somebody to get Cutco is the first time when they meet with you, even if they just buy one piece, right? Because that will create at least a relationship. But the best chance of them getting it is when they meet with you the first time. So it's the same thing with the phone. Your best chance of getting an appointment is first contact, right? So do not let them push you off. They probably truly believe, and I think this with the knives, with the purchase of the knives as well. In the moment, they really think that they're going to schedule with you when you call them back, right? In that moment, they truly, truly believe that. But you know better than they do, because what happens is life goes on. Maybe you call them tomorrow, they're even more busy. They don't even answer because then they start putting it off, right? It's a psychological thing in human beings where they automatically, when they see now, oh, it's the Cutco girl calling. Well, I'm not able to look at my calendar right now. She's not even being mean. She's just thinking, since I don't have a chance to look at my calendar, I just won't pick up. Next thing you know, you're in this endless loop. The other thing I was going to say is don't take anything personally. On the phone, if somebody is very short with you, it just doesn't mean anything, because this is the fact. You don't know what happened on their end. You don't know what's going on in their lives, and you don't know what happened right before they picked up that phone, right? Maybe on their way to pick up the phone, like they stubbed their toe or they dropped a wine glass, or, like those are annoying things, right? So they answer the phone in an annoying way, or in an annoyed way, but that has nothing to do with you. You don't know what's going on in their lives, but you do know that you are not ruining their day with a 30-second phone call, okay? But all of that being said, it's really, your motto has to be, don't take no for an answer nicely, right? Just don't take no for an answer, but do it nicely. You're probably going to have to ask a few times. I mean, it's really like the closing process too, right? It's really the same thing. There are so many parallels, because most people don't ever really just say no to us. They don't ever just say, most people don't just say, no, I don't want to buy anything. There's some version in between there of oh, I'm not sure about this or that. It's the same thing with the phone. Most people don't really just come right out and say yes or no. They just have some answer in between there, right? But in order for you to become successful with getting more appointments and increasing that average of making 10 calls to get one appointment, is to embrace the objection process, right? You are going to have to ask a few times, and that is completely normal. And I'd actually rather have you schedule an appointment if it's a little further out than to get into a loop of callbacks, right? So I have a quick phrase that I use that helps me get a lot of appointments with busy people, because everybody here is really busy. It's just, if I'm talking to someone who wants to schedule, they're interested, but they're like, oh, I'm really busy right now. Just give me a call tomorrow and I can take a look at my schedule when we're on the phone. And I'm like, sure, no problem. I can definitely give you a call back. But I was just going to ask, are you available real quick on Wednesday at 12, or would 6 p.m. be better for you? I'm going to be in your area. And there's something about breaking that conversation like that, where I'm actually telling them I'm going to do exactly what they asked me to do. Yeah, absolutely. I'll call you tomorrow. But I was just going to ask you real quick, the way that I say that, I have gotten so many appointments, you guys, with people who are just ready to hang up and have me call them back. And I think it's because they're overthinking it. And you have to know that, right? And it's sort of the same thing in closing. It's the same thing. Sometimes I'll even tell my customers when they're going back and forth, I'm like, I wonder if we're just overthinking this a little bit, right? I know you like this and I know you want this, like that. So it's the same thing. They're overthinking it, and you have to help them realize, do you know how quickly we could schedule this appointment instead of having another call, which just makes another job for you, right? So it's a little bit of a sneaky way of getting in. But it's not offensive at all, right? That's why I said, don't take no for an answer nicely. So double tap and text immediately, especially in these days with all of our customers having cell phones. But you have to text in that moment, right? So call twice, no answer, text in that very moment. And the past customer double tap and text is, I'm very good about, I prefer, I should say, very short and sweet. right? So if I was double tapping and then texting a customer, I would just say very simply, "Hi there, it's Susan with Cutco. Time for the sharpening of your knives, smiley face. Are you available on Monday at 11 or would 5 be better for you? I'll be in your area." That's it. Very short and sweet. Same thing if it's a referral. It can also be short and sweet. And I'm only saying this because you don't want them to feel like if the text makes it such a big deal, then now in their minds, they're thinking this phone call is going to be a big deal. I don't have time for this either, right? So for the referral, it would just be very straightforward. "Hi, Mrs. Smith. It's Susan Saunders. Your friend Jennifer Jones gave me your number just so I could ask you a quick question about something. Do you have a minute now?" That's it, right? Just get them to say, "Do I have a minute to talk?" And for a show lead, I always just like to put in there, like I do a lot of texting also. Nowadays, I get a lot of appointments by texting. But with a show lead, it's also very straightforward. "Hi there, it's Susan with Cutco. Just wanted to schedule the free sharpening you requested." You have to remind them, "You requested this at the home show," and then go into asking for the time. So another thing too is with objections, whatever the objection is, and I'm going to send over whenever you guys collect all the handouts and stuff, I'm going to send a handout with possible objections and how to handle them. But whatever happens, whatever the objection is, it should always end with asking for the appointment again. Right? So, for instance, you're calling a Cutco owner and they say, "Oh, you know what? Actually, my knives are really sharp." "Oh, yeah, I'm sure they are because it seems that way. I'm sorry, I'm sure it seems that way because it's a very gradual dulling process. But people really do notice a difference after I sharpen them. Are you available on Sunday at 3 or would Monday at 11 be better for you?" Right? Same thing with new recs, a different objection. "I'm not interested." "Okay, well, I understand. And mainly it just helps me out if you'd be willing to take a look at it. You don't have to get anything, but you may see something you like. Are you available on Monday at 11 or would 5 be better for you? It would really help me out." Right? So just so you get an idea, I'm not going to go through all of the objections, but just so you get an idea of like, honestly, for me, it's like it doesn't totally matter unless they say like I'm just not home on that time. But the other objections are kind of just like a smoke screen, right? That you can kind of get through them pretty easily as long as you keep going back and asking for the appointment. Just embrace the fact that you might have to ask multiple times. Basically, in closing, I just want you guys to never give up. You know, always believe in your ability to get appointments. I know we talk about that a lot in general, but this is really crucial. You have to believe that you have the appointments even before you get them and embrace the process, right? Don't shy away from it. You will get objections, and I believe that you guys can handle them. And that's what I have for you today.